Cool. Well, welcome all to the Lee Dems November meeting. Typically, we don't have a November meeting because we celebrate and then we have a party and then we don't meet again until January. But with everything that is happening on the federal level, having the Dems kind of do so well, and in the state, the Dems not do very well, it was a good time to ride the momentum and both positive and negative, and kind of just move forward and figure out what are the next steps. And so in March, we do have an election for our select board. And I feel like this might be a really good opportunity to start getting someone ready for that election. It has always been a goal of mine to do this, but we've never had the momentum or the excitement, or I don't even know what it's called, but me for the energy probably after a campaign. But I think we have a really good team on right now who could definitely make this happen. So the agenda today is very light. It's let's talk about the election, good, bad, any thoughts, and then let's move on. And Molly is here to help us move on, which is really exciting. Yay. So with that, I will open it. You all are currently muted, but you can unmute yourself. And if you have any thoughts or opinions about the election and what you thought were good or bad.
I think it was bad. We got our asses kicked.
Yep.
Yeah, we did.
Having said that, though, I do want to say thank you to all of you who voted and volunteered for at least the local Lee candidates. I mean, Amanda and Jeff did well. The candidate for sheriff for Stratford County from the Dems won. So at least in the local Lee area candidates, the Dems did well.
One thing.
There you go, Adam, spitting that.
Yes,
Good
if
job.
we were the whole country, there would be no problem.
Hey, Amanda. Amanda.
Hey, Mary.
Hi.
Yeah.
One thing I don't understand is why we hear so little from the state Democratic Committee.
I will say I hear a lot from them, but it's probably just because I'm the chair. So I think this year, and Molly, you might know more than I do with this, but they were obviously very focused on the presidential race. And my experience with the party this year was very similar to what my experiences have been in the past with them. And what I've realized this year in particular was that they focused on the big cities. Those who were on the smaller end, they didn't focus as much. So when I interacted with them, it was a lot of, how can I get Biden signs? And it would go crickets. So I actually partnered with the Dover Dems quite often. Jim would do a big pickup for everybody and we would distribute signs that way. Or every once in a while, you know, they did do calls, I want to say they were weekly, with town chairs. They would do a Biden update. So they were very focused on the top level. They did do quite a lot on the governor's side as well. There was quite a few ads that the Dems put, the party put out on behalf of Dan. I think what I have learned many years ago, and I actually shared this with the Barrington Dems the other day, was that I have never been able to rely on the party. And I don't think we should. We are totally capable of doing anything that they can do, and probably we could do it better because we know the people who live in Lee, and in my case, Lee and Barrington. Are you raising your hand?
I didn't want to interrupt, but I think maybe I should introduce myself on the call because I don't know that I know many of you. And I wear a number of different hats. So in addition to, I am the chair of the vice chair of the Exeter Select Board. I ran in the March of 2018 election cycle. And I'll talk about that, when we transition. But I also am the state and local regional director of Emily's List. And, in that capacity, I've worked with Amanda on her campaign this last time and this time. And then Amanda and I have interacted a number of different ways. We were on the board of, oh my God, what were we on the board of? It's like post-election Hayes and
NLC?
And yes, New Leaders Council. And then I also just recently joined the board of Our Moment PAC, which is a PAC to elect LGBTQ BIPOC folks, up and down the ballot in New Hampshire. And I also am on the board of the Stonewall Dems here in New Hampshire. And I'm also a committee member of the NHDP. So I am really interested in asking a few questions of Mary. So when you didn't hear a lot from the state party, are you talking about like before the election in support of candidates? Because that's a real concern that I echo. I think we as a party, and I am not on the inside of this conversation, like I don't have a function with the party, but I think it's really dangerous to let the top of the ticket really drive the conversation when we have redistricting to protect in the state. We have, sort of these wave elections that we see these big swings in the House and in the Senate. And I think it's really dangerous. So I'm just wondering, Mary, if you could talk a little bit more about what you mean by not hearing, like, are you talking about post-election or pre-election and they didn't do the work that Amanda was talking about?
Well, I guess it all started in 2016 when I helped canvass and went in and we got like this 10-minute go out and talk to people about this when you knock on their door. And at the time, the question was, well, wouldn't you really like to have a woman as president? And that was about it, and I don't think that's a strategy. And in between then and now, I send messages to a contact at the state Dems. I very occasionally get a response. I usually don't get any response at all. And certainly in this election, I had no sense of a strategy at all.
I mean, I think that is very fair criticism. And that's really worrisome with somebody who is that, sort of plugged in and willing to go door to door and say, wouldn't you like a woman as president? Like that's troubling. There is, and I don't know, Amanda, if you've talked about this, but the commission that's going to look at what happened between, and
No, we haven't had a meeting since that announcement happened. So feel free to please talk about that.
I mean, I should have said something before we started recording, but I would very much encourage you all, if you have thoughts about this, about, sort of the lack of strategy or the, only focusing on state, top of the ticket federal races. I think that is a really fair criticism and people on the committee need to hear about it. And it also, it is worth noting that when Jean Shaheen runs for US Senate, now this is her third race or fourth race, this is her third term, she builds a campaign structure that is outside of the Democratic Party. And that is worth noting.
That was the only one I got that was outside of it. And it was the only one that I felt tapped into. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that we completely miss the forest for the trees for the forest. It's crazy how I was on a million calls trying to help out and I couldn't mention a single person's name. All it was, have you voted? Where's the ballot? How are you getting to the voting booth? We weren't talking about anything else. We were so focused on just vote, we trust you to vote straight Democratic, that we completely missed the whole story.
Yeah. And I think, that is going to be really, some of the landscape that I see that's going to be really hard in the next 2 years is going to be protecting Hassan's seat. And she is sort of newer in the state. I guarantee you there will be not one Republican validator who's going to stand up in the way that they stand up for Shaheen and, and sort of stay neutral or take her side or, whatever it looks like. And I think that the outside interest groups that are going to, if we're seriously thinking about Sununu running for the US Senate, which I think, that's the conventional wisdom, the outside accountability groups who care about public education, access to affordable healthcare, access to reproductive choice, they are going to be focused on making sure that he vetoes the most heinous of the legislation that comes out of our very Republican controlled general court. And they're not going to be focused on doing the accountability work that is going to be necessary to chip away at his, I don't know how much, whatever margin he won by. And that's going to largely fall to town Democratic committees who are going to have to be talking to their neighbors, talking to their friends, talking to people across the aisle. And a lot of that can start at the local level. That starts select board, it starts on budget recommendations committee, it starts on, all of the town committees that you have to sort of build up a network of infrastructure that can be like, when Sununu is saying he's cutting your taxes, what he's meaning is your local government is raising your taxes because we still need to function. And so Sununu cutting property tax or, saying that he's cutting taxes on the state level is raising your property taxes. And that's the message that needs to get out, because that's exactly what is going to happen.
And we keep missing that message, and we keep allowing them to hold the ball. Oh, income tax and all this stuff. And we're completely not able to get together a way to fight that. And
right. And then we just inherit, Sununu is a Trump guy through and through. And like, obviously that message did not resonate with anybody. And it was completely ineffective. Otherwise we wouldn't have seen, Sununu won Exeter, which is a very, very blue town. And that's really scary to think about.
Well, of course, the other aspect here too is that groups like ALEC really focus on controlling the state bodies, because if Republicans are in control at the state, then they control the redistricting, and that has huge implications.
Yeah, it does.
So I don't see why they don't make more of a deal out of who are the Republicans that are controlled by ALEC, which is another word for those corporate influences, who've been bought out. And
it's mostly Americans for Prosperity, which is the Greg Moore group, and they, they targeted really well. And they, didn't carry the Corky Messmer message. They didn't tie their candidates to somebody that they knew wasn't going to win. They tied him to Sununu. And, and whatever you think about Dan Feltus, he's a wonderful person and a, extremely effective legislator, but I don't know that he was the right choice to have the party hug and control, down all the way down the ballot. And the other thing that I will say, and I'm sorry that I'm monopolizing the conversation, I certainly want to have a dialogue here, but like, there is this sense that, there are going to be coattails from the top of the ticket. And if you have really strong people at the top of the ticket, then, it's going to naturally migrate down the ballot, the way that you were talking about earlier. And that didn't happen. And we cannot be in a position where that is what we're counting on. We need to have strong campaigns that start at the state and local level in order to build this up.
I think we really missed the boat too on understanding what Democratic voters want right now. And I think it was hard enough that we were voting between two old white men for president. And then, at the top of the ticket, I think we just have to, like you said, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, we have to realize we're looking for something different. We're looking for change. We're looking to see it. And, I think we have to be more aware of who we're choosing.
And I mean, that is also true, but I also think we need to, be meeting the moment more than just lifting up diverse candidates. And that obviously is, and that is investing in the people and, and frankly, you know, election night was really awful and horrible because I have, you know, for Emily's list, I had the one legislative chambers that flipped, right? We were blue and now we're red, but we lost ground in all swing states. Like there are no legislative chambers that were, you know, oh, we're going to be even more Democratic. Like that did not happen. And I think what we need to remember is what Mary was talking about, you know, these redistricting really matters. And this past election showed just how you know, it's impossible to compete in these really, really gerrymandered districts when you are hampered by the pandemic that doesn't allow you to talk face to face with voters. And there's something, you know, I was talking with a couple of my state ledge friends who didn't win, like John Morgan, for example. He couldn't go out and face-to-face look somebody in the eye and say, you know that I wouldn't support an income tax. I told you that and I didn't, and here's why. And Democrats believe in science, and Democrats don't want to endanger their you know, their constituents and their communities. And so we stayed home and we tried to get people on the phone to talk to us. And we're never going to have the kind of penetration that we can get in order to make a difference and in order to save these seats. So all of that to say, you know, I think that New Hampshire, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work as the Democratic Party. I think town committees have a huge role in what the accountability piece with the NHDP looks like. And I'm glad, you know, that was sort of the first thing that we heard tonight was like, what the heck, where were they? And I think that that's real. And so I think that it's going to be a reckoning, but I also think that the work can start, you know, now in terms of recruitment and in terms of building up people who are going to make a difference in the community.
And I think I just want to say, like, I didn't mean to sound, what I said was
no,
obnoxious, but in the
Agree.
point. But what I'm trying to say is that when somebody comes from a different experience, they have a different perspective. And I think that what we were looking for as New Hampshire was who's going to see New Hampshire and who's going to bring us forward. And that energy wasn't coming that we needed. And I think that that's, you know, like you said, I saw a lot of great Jean Shaheen ads, and I definitely felt like she was kind of speaking to the moment a little bit more. And when we're all in one message and one bunch, and all we're doing is like get to the polls, we miss all the things that make us special. We lost it. And so, yeah, I think you're 100% right.
Agreed. Well said.
Adam, thank you for what you did for Amanda. It was nice to have a special message. She was our mini Jean Shaheen in town. So
yeah, no, Amanda's amazing.
She did a great job.
You guys are funny. No, I will say the one thing so Jeff and I were talking about this, and actually I was talking about this with a couple of the Dover Dems as well. We are in a bubble on the seacoast, and I have to say that in my mind, all I was worried about is Joe's just a name holder. He's not really going to try like he hasn't for the last 3 years. Now, he did have some money behind him with PAC, which I'm grateful for that. Like I kind of want a little fight, you know. I mean, but beyond that, what I was hearing with our first House Democratic caucus afterwards, we actually met on the 5th via Zoom.
Wow.
And what I didn't realize was how hard everybody else had to work for their seat. That was me in 2016. But what they kept saying was there wasn't a centralized message beyond just, you know, voting down the ticket. What we were trying to do, right, was the Family Leave Act, well, which we all think is a great idea and is completely necessary. But what the Republicans were calling it was an income tax, when clearly they don't know how it is to set up an insurance plan when you have to put money in to get money out. And that message, a lot of reps, especially new people who are running in the seat for the first time, didn't have a rebuttal. Mm-hmm. And this party didn't give that to them, and they felt like they were floundering on their own. So we lost an amazing amount of people. I mean, just, I was talking about this today, Kermit, who you all don't know, but he is a phenomenal House member. He's been there forever. He sat in front of me for the last 2 years. He served on the progressive, I was on a caucus with him, and now the name is forgetting. nonetheless, he's just an amazing person, and we lost him. Someone beat him because of the income tax message. So, you know, we lost other chairs. I mean, so Clive, who was the chair of municipality, he lost. Kermit was the vice chair of commerce. So it's amazing to me how all of these really amazing people got beat over a message that no one had a rebuttal to. So no one on that particular meeting was super happy with the party. And I'm hoping with this task force, things will change. I kind of hope leadership changes. I think that we need some fresh perspectives and new eyes on the whole situation. And although we lost redistricting, I think in 2 years, who knows what will happen? We might flip back, and that would be lovely. So, any final thoughts on the election? And we'll move forward.
So I'd like to look at the numbers, and I limited myself to just Lee because there's a ridiculous number of numbers, and I can share this if you want. I can share my screen, although Amanda has to let me do it for technical reasons in the Zoom.
You should be able to. No, go for it.
So let's see if I can do it now. Now I can do it. So I thought kind of the interesting part, and you touched on this earlier about Shaheen's campaign being a little bit different. And I think the proof is in the pudding here, where she, out of all the Democratic candidates, and I left out the county stuff, but whether it was federal or state, she got the most votes in Lee. She's the only one who got over 2,000. You know, Biden's close behind. Pappas is over 100 votes fewer than Shaheen, which I thought was interesting. But it's not that, I don't think it's that there was a whole bunch of drop off between people just voting for the federal offices and then stopping and going home, because the vote totals are not that different. So like in the Senate race, there's 2,800, governor 2,900, all our state races 28 and change. It's that people really are doing split ticket voting. And in Lee, at least, the governor's race specifically, is just a massive difference, which I honestly I don't fully understand, especially in Lee, because you voted heavily Democratic at the federal level. You've done it again for the state legislature, but then for governor, everybody flipped. Or not everybody, but a significant number of people flipped. 400, between 400 and 700 people, depending on which race you're comparing it to. So I don't know how to say anything other than there's either something about Feltus or there's something about Sununu. The only anecdotal evidence I can give you is someone I know who's not exactly a Democrat, but I know voted for Shaheen, also voted for Sununu, and when he was pressed on it, he was like, Sununu's doing a good job. So I don't know what to tell you beyond that. I don't know, is it really necessary for the Democratic candidate to take the pledge and do it full-throatedly? Maybe. I don't know.
What percentage voted in Lee? Do you know that?
You mean percentage of registered voters?
Yeah. Like what was it?
I don't know what the registered voter total number is. But we had
over 4,000 people.
We had almost 3,000 people vote in our election, so I have to believe that our percentage is very, very high. Because I know I think, and I could be wrong about this, that according to the 2010 census, that we had fewer than 5,000 people in town total.
And there's kids, like a lot of those are kids.
Right.
Right.
Right. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have the 2020 numbers. Or I haven't looked for them. Maybe they are available, but I just don't know. But I have to believe that that's pretty significant. That it's pretty high.
Yeah, it looks pretty. I mean, and this was across the state. Like this wasn't just in. Yeah,
I think the other thing you could do maybe is not just registered voters, but also compare it to prior years. That might give you a clue.
I mean, it certainly is interesting. It seems like people there. It also seems like you all did a really good job of turning out the vote and getting people to vote all the way down the ballot. I mean, that's what these numbers show. You're a little bit more than 100 votes off of the presidential, which is incredible.
Eric, did you have the numbers for executive council?
I didn't look at that one. I mean, I could find it pretty quickly, I think, but.
Well, I mean, we had a real lack at the top of the state ticket here, and we sort of pulled it out at the bottom. I mean, Mark Brave also pulled it out in Lee, right?
Yeah, but Mark was a county office, so that's why I excluded it.
I mean, it was Mark McKenzie at the executive council, got killed, I think. I don't know how I think he won in Lee though. And then the Mark Brave.
I had done a similar spreadsheet a few days ago, and then stupidly I didn't save it. But if I recall correctly, the other offices are similar to the state Senate and state House numbers.
Yeah, I mean, what this shows me is the drop-off number is not big, and so something is going right. And if we're excluding the Sununu numbers, something is going really right in Lee in terms of getting people engaged up and down the ballot. And that also, leads really nicely into a conversation about March.
Well, I would say here that people took the Democrats' message and voted. They just didn't vote for Democrats down the line here.
Well, it looks like they just didn't vote for Feltus.
It's that governor's race. There was something going on there, but whether it's love for Sununu or disdain for Feltus.
Every person told me it was because they felt like our state was doing better with coronavirus than other states, and that was Sununu, and they kept seeing him be strong, and nobody was talking about all the vetoes. Nobody was talking about the things he wasn't doing. Nobody was talking about his complete lack of leadership. We just were doing a good job with coronavirus, and they gave him all the credit.
That's not dissimilar from messages from other places, I don't think. Yeah, and whether or not that's fair, we can debate that. We all would have a different opinion, I imagine. And I also think the proof is going to be in the pudding. He benefited a lot from the fact that New Hampshire is very spread out, and we have low population density, and therefore the coronavirus numbers aren't. And we're also a relatively wealthy state, so you can work from home largely and not have to be in a public facing sector. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he benefited a lot from, the coronavirus is going well. There's not the economic devastation. Hospital beds are not totally filled, and our testing, percentage of people who are tested versus people who are actually positive for the virus is low.
Well, the Sununu name was always going to be impossible to beat, but we didn't know it was going to suck the rest of the Democrats down with him.
And we're gonna have to figure that piece out because he's not going anywhere. And we need to have the Senate seat.
Yeah. The problem with the March conversation is we can never get candidates.
Right. I was saying we should probably transition and talk about what we can do for March. And Molly, too, I think you already know this, but for everyone else, our esteemed select board are all Republicans. There are some that are more conservative than others. And there are some that we like more than others as well. And so, unfortunately, if you look at the numbers, what our leadership is in all of the boards, it's not just select boards, all of them, they tend to lean Republican while the actual town is Democratic. So sometimes those don't work in our favor, right? So we need to be able to get people on those boards that reflect some different values. However, as Dean has alluded, we have had a lot of challenges to get people to step up and help, and even just to attend an hour meeting once a month is hard. So to get someone to run for, a select board position can probably be a little daunting and overwhelming. However, what I want that person to also know, if they happen to watch this afterwards, you have a whole team to support you and throw money at your campaign and to help you. So that's just my plea before we start. But Molly, maybe if you want to talk about recruiting or tactics or what got you to be on a select board.
Sure. So I'm sure you all have heard about the equation that goes into running for office, and especially that goes into convincing women to run for office, is you have to be asked an average of 7 times, right, before you say yes. And so there is that piece of like, if we are as the Democrats in town, sort of waiting for people to volunteer and show up, that's probably not what's going to happen. And so, I think, it's so funny. I remember having a conversation with somebody, and I can't even remember who it was with or where it was. And this person said to me something after learning that I was on, like the most local of local governments, about how, the most ill-equipped people end up on those boards. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, like, that's not nice. And he said, no, hear me out. Like, the people who are in your town, who all they want to do is to be the big voice in the room. And all they want to do is to be in charge of their little fiefdom. Because the problem with local government is you actually have so much control. And you set the tax rate of the town, you can prioritize what services get done. If there's a problem with trash, like, that's your problem. And so what we do is we shuttle these people into, higher and higher office. And we think like, oh, you're really capable, you should run for a state senate, instead of like, oh, you're really capable, we need you in town hall because it's a mess. And the assholes who are in charge, like, shouldn't, they're in charge because they just want the power. They don't want actually to do anything that's good for the town. And so, it's this really interesting theory about, all of the people that we like shuttle off to Concord or, try to get to run for DC, where they have such little actual influence unless, you're a certain. So that's the thing that I tell people all the time is like, if you actually want to make a difference, and if you actually want to say like right away on day one, this is the office to run for. And it's, there has been a lot of, it's been a big learning curve for me. I've spent my career in politics. As soon as I graduated college, I moved home to New Hampshire and ran then State Senate Maggie Hassan's first state Senate campaign that she won. So that's how long I've been working in politics. And then I've, worked for interest groups. I worked for Planned Parenthood. I worked for AARP. There's a lot of different things that I've done in my life. And throughout all of that time, people would always ask me, well, are you going to run are you going to run for office? Like, when are you going to run for office? And I would always say, well, never, because I never want my neighbors to be yelling at me about the stop sign down the street. And then what happened in 2018 was there was this like young Republican up and comer, you know, sort of like totally reminded Matt Mowers, who ran for Congress, reminded me a lot of this guy. And he was, you know, determined to run for Exeter Select Board, and he was going to build his resume by serving on the Exeter Select Board, and he was going to bring conservative values back to Exeter, and, you know, we can return to the party of Lincoln and all this nonsense. And I just thought, like, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about? This is not what public service looks like at all. And I have a master's in public administration. And I was like, you know, I'm actually far more qualified than this guy. And so I decided on, you know, one of the last days of filing to file. And then I ran a real campaign. You know, I sent out mailers, I knocked on doors, I had phone banks. I went to forums, I had boosted Facebook posts, and we spent maybe $5,000, which, you know, Exeter is maybe 5 times the size of Lee, like, you know, roughly, maybe a little bit less. So, you know, you can scale down from what I had to do, but it wasn't that much work. And the campaigning season is so short, you know, it ends up being roughly like 4 weeks, and anybody can do anything for 4 weeks. So you can make the phone calls, you can have the socially distanced events, you can knock on doors, you know, whatever it looks like in February and March. But the thing about Select Board is it's actually really rewarding, and it pays a lot more than state house service, right? I don't know what the salary is for your Select Board, but I get paid $3,000 a year, which is not a lot of money. Like, I'm not feeding my family on that, but it actually like is compensation, and it is, you know, vacation money, or, you know, if I need to buy I have 2 kids, if I need to buy them, you know, whatever, like, that is it is actually compensated. And it's also this real opportunity to be a problem solver in a way that then gets you, you know how I talked about how we shouldn't send our best people off to Concord or DC, but like, you know, there is this sort of trajectory if you want it. So it also really prepares you to govern and to make decisions. So if anybody is interested about how I actually think about my service, you know, I find it to be incredibly challenging. You know, I hate it on some days. And it is also, you know, one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life, you know, to actually look at my neighbors and think and know, you know, really know that I've made their life better. You know, there's this one woman who's become a really good friend, and I was canvassing, and I knocked on her door, and she said, oh, you know, this 22-year-old Republican guy had just knocked on her door, and she has a very disabled daughter. And her daughter is growing up, so she's not a baby anymore, but she still is, you know, incredibly disabled, uses a wheelchair, is nonverbal. And she said, what I asked Nick, who was the candidate that I was running against, one of the candidates that I was running against, she said, I told Nick that I thought that somewhere in downtown Exeter, there should be an adult-sized changing table so that I can change my daughter when we're out and about, and we don't have to come all the way home, and I don't have to interrupt her downtown participation, because she really likes to be out and about. You know, it's something that makes her happy. And Nick had evidently said to her, well, you know, we can't ask taxpayers to pay for a changing table. Like, how dare you ask taxpayers to pay for an adult changing table? And so she said to me, you know, I'm feeling really disenfranchised because I want my tax dollars to also go to support my daughter and people like my daughter. And I was like, oh, well, that seems, you know, really simple. We're doing a renovation of the library, and babies can use adult changing tables, just adults can't use baby changing tables. So why don't we talk to the library about putting in an adult changing table while they're doing the renovation, because they were already doing it. And we went to the library trustee meeting, and they were like, well, no, you know, that's not going to work. And then once I was elected, I was able to then go back and be like, put in an adult changing table. You can redo the little piece of the design, And they were like, okay, and they did it. And it was this one tiny little thing that, you know, changed this woman and a few other families in Exeter, you know, it changed their lives. But it's like, it's small, meaningful moments like that. And then the bigger moments of like, well, we're not, you know, now we're going to have safe sidewalks on a couple of big streets that we have to pave, you know, that pave the sidewalks and do all that stuff. And, you know, and then there's the tax incentive districts that are going to bring in revenue. And then, you know, I have to serve on the planning board and there's big development decisions that happen, but it's, you know, so it's these big things coupled with these really little things that you can really do to make your community better. And so, you know, that is my service on the select board. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to run again. I can't believe I'm up already. And, you know, so that's something that's in the back of my head. And now as I'm talking about it, I'm like, of course I have to run. Like I have still so many things to do to make this town, you know, a little bit better. It's pretty great, but we can make it better. And so, you know, I don't know the right people to look for. I think that you all just need to, you know, sort of put your heads together and say, these are the 6 people that I'm going to reach out to. And these are also the 6 people that I'm going to reach out to. And it's okay if all of them overlap, because that's part of the equation is people need to be asked more than one time. And I also think, you know, to have the ballot and the vote totals that you just showed me, like people are excited and people are voting all the way down the ticket, which is really great. And that, I mean, that certainly didn't happen in Exeter. There was like a 3,000 voter gap between the top of the ticket and the bottom of the ticket. So that's something that we need to work on here. And so I think, you know, the work that you all are doing is really, the proof is in the pudding when everybody is voting all the way down the ballot. And so I think that there should be voter excitement for change at the really local level, because, you know, once you say these people do not share your values, you can have change.
So I guess one of my questions is that we've thrown this out there a couple times and again, haven't gotten anybody. And I know we have to ask people, but do you think there's other ways to encourage people or because it's probably hard to ask. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, as you know, right? There's a lot of work that goes with select board. They meet, you know, twice a month here in Lee, and they are always recognized. You can't go to a market basket without being chatted up. How would you, you know, kind of say, yes, that's not a concern, but that's the good part of it, right? Like you are so ingrained in the community, but how do you, maybe if someone who's a little hesitant, like how do you kind of push them towards the right answer? And yes, you do want to run.
I mean, I think the biggest way to get people to run for something is to show them something that they want to change. So if they're, you know, what do the select board agendas look like? What are you taking up? Are people on the select board refusing to change Christopher Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? Like, are there people who are mad about that? What about plowing? You know, like trash pickup is always a big thing. Those are the ways to get people motivated, is to show them like, here's what you could actually help do, and here's what's not happening at the local level. So I think it would make sense to really closely monitor the agendas of the select board. And if there's controversial things that you see on the agenda, like, are they still meeting in person or are they meeting on Zoom? Do you know?
We meet on Zoom.
Yeah. So I think if you can scan the agenda, because all of that is public information, and if you see, oh, well, this is going to be interesting, now is the time when all of the New Hampshire towns and municipalities are going over budget. So like, what is it, what does the tax and sewer rate look like? What does the, how do you make a town more environmentally friendly? Like, is that, there are ways to push for that stuff. And it's really a lot easier sometimes to push from the inside than it is to push from the outside. Like, you need both of those forces. So those are some of the things I would say. And I would also say, it's not that different from like having kids in school, you know, you're always going to be recognized. And it's a really good chance to get to know your community better. It's a chance to get to know your neighbors better. And it's a chance to make friends. And there has been literally no times that I have had a negative interaction in person. I've had plenty of negative interactions online, and, you know, plenty of like, you know, people coming by my house and stealing the signs. I don't think that that is related to select board. I have never had an interaction that has made me feel uncomfortable or unsafe in person. It's always been like nasty emails that are like, you know, what are you going to do? People hide behind the screen all the time. So yeah, and I would also say it's maybe not for the people who are so shy and introverted that speaking in public is an issue, especially if you are, you know, going to, but I also don't think that that's something that I would even, it's just like, you know, there are many ways to lead and, you know, just a vote and just, you know, writing is fine. And I also think now in the time of COVID, it's going to look, you know, the access point is sort of lower, right? Like you can participate in a lot of these meetings without having to leave your house. And you can, you know, see up close and personal the kind of, and I'm, you know, making assumptions that all of the select board members are old and they're all white and, you know, that's my assumption. And all, you're right. And all dudes, like, of course. And so, you know, that's enough. There is a good chance that something inane comes out of each one of their mouths every week. And so like, if you take turns sort of tuning in, you'll see it immediately. And that's a really easy way to get people interested. And, you know, frankly, like that was how I got interested. I didn't want to see this little young guy who didn't share any of my values representing my town. Like that's why I decided to run. And I also think, you know, instead of just putting it out there, like the Lee Dems need a select board candidate, you have to proactively reach out and, you know, do a brainstorming list. Here are the people that I think would be good. Here's who's going to reach out to them. Here's how we're going to stagger our approach. So we're not all calling them on the same day. We'll take turns and, you know, so I think that would be my advice.
I can start. Amanda, you know, you're a really great leader. Has anyone ever asked you to run for select board?
I have.
Yes, Dwight Barney asked, and I said no because I'm running for the state house. He goes, "Oh, that's a good choice too." So maybe when I'm done with my,
I noticed your Jeff's opponent was trying to do both.
Well, my other component, he doesn't have a job. I have to pay my mortgage. If something paid, maybe, but unfortunately, you can only give so much time for free because everyone will accept it. But maybe in a couple of years, not right now. But thank you for asking.
I don't need an answer right now, so you think about
it. Maybe in 4 years. Who knows what will happen? But thank you. No, I think it's an important one, and I have seriously thought about it. If I wasn't running for state rep, which in itself is time consuming, and again, a whole $100 a year, I think that it's totally a possibility. Because I completely agree with Molly. I think it'd be wonderful to, you make no impact on the state level. I'll just be I'm one of 400. So I feel that very often, and now being in the minority, your feelings are even less considered. Your vote does matter, and it matters more because you're in the minority, but it's not necessarily something that will be impactful right away. Doing something on the local level, like a select board, totally. And I have considered it, but thank you for asking. Ask me again in 2 years. Katrin, did you want to say something? You went off mute.
Oh, it was a while ago. I don't remember what it was. I wish I had the personality for select board. I would absolutely love to do that.
You
but
do.
I
You
am
totally have the personality.
so not able to manage my opinion. So, but I would love it if I could do it. I just can't. You got to know yourself, right?
Do we know anyone who is currently on one of the committees or departments that might want to shift from where they are up to select board?
I don't know if he's thinking about it, but I think Paul Gazowski would be a wonderful candidate.
And I don't think we should.
Asked him.
I don't think we should think about it in terms of who might want to shift. I think we should think about it in terms of who would be good.
That's
They
it.
might not have even thought about it. They might not
Yes.
even know.
Yep.
So who do we think would be good that we could ask?
Who do we
So-
think we gets the town of Lee and will move us in the right direction and will speak up for us? I think that's, if we made a list, I love the idea of brainstorming a list, because I think we have so many great people we're just not even thinking of right now.
Yeah.
That could really, and I think maybe they never even thought about it. Maybe it never even occurred to them.
So I asked someone who is currently on one of these boards what she thought. I basically asked her that same question, and the answer she gave me is actually somebody on this call who is currently muted, and it's James. Suggested that he would be good.
What do you think, James?
Still on mute.
He ran away. He's under the bed, hiding. No.
How many?
He was the one who brought it up on Facebook too, so maybe.
He can't unmute.
Oh, he can't unmute. Why? I will unmute you. Oh, I can only ask you to unmute.
Well, it could also be maybe
There he is.
people around. Oh.
There we go.
You should speak, James.
Well, we're going to take this silence as a yes.
I know. We're
Still muted. James, you're not muted from our side, but your little microphone is not covered. But yes, you could always type in your answer. I'm on my phone. Oh, so I just undo it on my phone. I just unmute. I'm on my phone too, and I just unmute on my phone.
Come on, you're a Democrat.
Well, we can always stand by.
Stand
We
by.
can always come back to you too.
didn't say no. I'm noting that he
He did not say no. I did not see a no at all there. Nope, not a one little no even hinted. All right, so we have our candidate. That's great.
How many seats are up? And how many, is it a 5?
3.
We have 3,
One
and we've
seat?
got one a year.
Yeah.
And the gentleman who's up this year is the chair. Oh, I'm readmitting him. Sorry. He must be switching his audio.
Who's up?
John, of course.
John.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yay.
Yay.
There I am. So adjusting my settings booted me off the call. Now I'm back. So Eric, were you possibly talking with Rebecca about that?
Oh, Eric left. What the heck?
Oh, Eric. I don't know. I have thought about it. I was approached recently to put my name in the hat for the school board. But with work schedules and school schedules right now, time has very little, there's very little available time. So I guess I need to know more about, what the time commitment is for the select board. I do know, I know it's John LaCourse is up right now. I had spoken out against Kerry Brown when he posted some very unkind comments on social media not too long ago. And I would like to see him off the board at some point. And maybe
Agreed.
that's,
I think he's going to have a lot of
that's
people
my,
running against him.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that guy. Oh, what a numbnut.
You want to run?
No.
Hey, there was a guy who tried to primary Bugby, I think, this past Yeah, he sounded kind of like a Democrat. I didn't know who he was, but we could go figure that out and figure out if we want to encourage him to do it again.
Definitely. Dean, do you think Ruth would do anything?
She just walked by and said no.
I know, I heard her and I was like, well, she's gonna walk into our meeting. We'll just volunteer her for something.
And I mean, I can speak a little bit to the time commitment. You know, there are some weeks that I spend 20 hours. That is very rare. That is almost never. And I think one of the bigger things is the committee work that comes with serving on the select board, because you are usually, you know, the select board rep. And any of the committees that are not planning board, I would suggest, because planning board is a very big lift. And I also think, you know, you can put the time in that you have. And so, you know, on the weeks that I am really busy, my chair, who I'm really close with, he will take on a lot of responsibilities. And you probably won't have that, especially if you're going into a sort of a hostile board. But they're not going to give you the important committee assignments yet anyway. So, you know, I think it'll be building a bench, building relationships, and doing the work that you can do when you're in a minority. And I would also say,
you know, I think even though Lee is a bunch of Democrats, from the voting, from like the Sununu thing, I think they kind of are worried about their taxes, and this argument about income tax was worked on them. Which personally I think is insane, because I probably pay a lot of income tax, a lot of property tax. But I would pay so much more income tax to you guys if there was an income tax.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think it's going to be really important, because there's going to be a lot of downshifting that happens, and if we don't have a solid drum, there is going to be, we're gonna lose that narrative, and Sununu, whatever he runs for, is going to win by the same margin. And if we have a solid drumbeat on the ground that says Sununu is raising your property taxes, because we can all agree, I think, that the way that New Hampshire taxes work is completely unequal and needs a lot of rework. We are not going to win that fight, that messaging fight, or that legislative fight anytime soon. So we need to work with the tools that we have. We need to call it out where we see it, and we need to message a whole lot better against Sununu, in my view.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what he does with the budget, if he wants to cut both the business taxes and the meals and rooms. I understand his reasoning, because obviously they were hit the hardest with the pandemic, but he hasn't come to the table with anything to make up for those dollars. So I'll be curious to see how the budgeting season goes. Also in Lee, by talking with Scott Bugby and actually with Carrie as well, they used to have to attend commission meetings, but they don't have to anymore. Scott does them because he loves the committees that he's on. Carrie was on the Ag Commission and has stopped going because he said that his world is too busy. So James, I don't think you'd have to worry about that. I don't think that select board has been assigned to commissions in the last couple of years, because they say there are more people on the commissions than there are on the select board. So you'll get some select board members like Scott who do sit in just because he's passionate about, say, the Conservation Commission, or he's on the Heritage Commission too, right, Katrin?
Yeah, he's on like every commission.
Yeah.
I'm on like 5 different things with him.
Yeah. So the town vision, all of those, because he wants to be on them, but it's not because he's required to be. So what Molly says about whatever time you have, just be clear with it up front. It's the same thing with any position, House, Senate, executive committee, executive council, sorry. It's whatever you can put in as is what you can do. I mean, it's basically a volunteer position, and they love anybody who will volunteer for the role. Just you have to make sure you're there for the right reasons if it fits your life.
If for some reason James is not excited, is there another pool of candidates that are, I'm just wondering about this for long term too, for the next down the road. Is there another pool of candidates that we tend to have a lot of success with as Democrats? Are there, you know, I don't know. Is there, I'm just thinking, like, I'm on the town hall committee, and I'm looking at people and their skill sets, and some of them are just so impressive, and they have so much of what they need to know how to make these decisions quickly, and then other people wouldn't have any of that. And I'm not really sure, like, is there a kind of person that would really fit in well?
So I have a question that kind of piggybacks on that. And I think it also kind of piggybacks to something that Dean was saying. You know, I'm relatively new to town. I've been here 5 years. And in that time, there's been probably three major initiatives on the ballot. One was the library, the new library community center, which was voted down, you know, by an overwhelming margin, I believe, and 2 attempts at a town center, which have both been voted down. And, you know, I think what Dean said about taxes, you know, that message, I think that resonates in town, that they don't want. So I guess what is an agenda, so to speak? You know, what is it we're hoping to what's the message, I guess? And maybe that's why I haven't jumped in the pool just yet, is you know, I'm trying to figure out, you know, what is it we want fighting to, yeah, exactly, what are we trying to accomplish?
I mean, you know, that's something that I think takes a little bit of brainstorming, but I also think that, you know, one of the things that we're going to have to be really thoughtful in the post-COVID recovery is what does protecting our services look like without raising taxes? What does it look like to stand up to the politicians in Concord who are going to try to downshift everything and make and force us to raise our taxes? What does affordable housing look like so that people can actually afford to live here and staff the business and industry that is, you know, wanting to be on the seacoast? What does protecting our, you know, environment and safe and open spaces look like? And, you know, I can't speak to what you're passionate about, but I think that you can, what would be a good thought exercise is to sort of write down the things that you think are going well, the things that you could improve upon, the things that you want to see as a visionary for your town, and the things that are in your wheelhouse. So, you know, sort of not knowing anything about you other than I'm imagining that you have young children. If you're talking about school, you know, what does it look like to support a town that is going to continue to be a place where people with young children want to move to, and you know, that have the social supports and services that are going to support sustainable growth in your town. You know, so those are sort of the things that I would think about that resonate with you, and also think, you know, just the things in your background, things in your resume that you think would resonate with people. But it also doesn't need to say, you know, you don't have to say like, so-and-so is polluting your drinking water, therefore they have to go. It can just be like, I have a really good vision for this town. I am who we want to bring to this town, and you need to elect me because we need to be represented. And we've had enough of this, the same old, and let's get people excited. And the numbers on the screen that were shared earlier show me that people have passion and support for bottom of the ticket candidates. And so you're going to have to turn out more voters than the people who are like, no, I don't want the community center in my town because that's going to raise my taxes. And that's hustle.
I've spent a lot of years I was on the library planning committee and a lot of other places, and I happily would love to share some ideas and brainstorms just from listening to town people, being on the losing side of some of these things, and would be happy to brainstorm at least that angle, because that's a passion thing in this town.
Yeah, and I don't think that you have to run in order to say, I'm going to fix something. It can
No,
be,
yeah.
yeah, it can be a positive campaign that says, you know, we need to have this experience on the board.
Mm. I think that's the thing, is saying this is what we're missing, and this person can fill that really well.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that's helpful, James. I hope you're really considering running. And it sounds like you have a kitchen cabinet right here.
No,
We'll
it's
hold you up.
definitely very helpful. And you know, I think one of the things I've always noticed, and because I sat for a period of time on the Recreation Commission, and yeah, I can vouch for the fact that there was never a select board member at any of our rec commission meetings. But you know, looking at the census data over the years, there's definitely a trend of more younger families moving into town, and maybe because it's, you know, one of the more affordable towns in the area, and with the school district, and maybe that's an angle too, you know, giving a voice for younger families, and, you know, kind of that sustainability, so that they don't just put their kids through school and then move away.
Yeah.
Right.
I have an issue I always like to raise, which I think I don't know if a Democratic candidate could use it, and I don't know if it goes on the town level or the state level. But my mother's house in Palm Beach, the property tax bills look a lot like ours, except they have an additional line called allowance. And it's basically some number like $30,000 or $50,000 that's on everybody's tax bill. And it just comes off your assessment. And it has the effect of making the taxes more progressive, because the people with, you know, more expensive houses, that $50,000 doesn't really change their assessment, but the people with lower valued houses, that can change their assessment a lot. So it sort of pushes the taxes up the wealth scale a bit. And I think that would be a pretty good issue for Democrats, especially in Oyster River, where the school taxes are sort of driving the poor people out.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I suspect that you'd have to change the law to let, you know, but we are a home rule state. I don't know how that would work, but that's an interesting concept. You know, one of the things that drives me crazy is we have all of these elderly exemptions, and like, it's not something that you can run on. or I would not advise running on that. But it, you know, it is a very you know, unequal way of you know, who are we choosing as a community to subsidize? And so we're choosing all of these, you know, elderly housing complexes, and then we're, you know, chasing the tax base right out of town. Again, I wouldn't advise running. I think that is a losing issue. But it's, you know, it's something to certainly have discussions about. But yeah, I think, you know, think about what you can add, because a political campaign doesn't necessarily need to always be about what's wrong. It can be what you can add. And I think that that's a great framing to think about.
James, I would also suggest that you read the master plan if you have yet to do so, because that is a collection of ideas from each of the commissions and the ad hoc committees of things that they want to get done in the next 10 years. And we're probably halfway through at this point. So you might even be able to take some of those ideas and say, I can help this commission do this, or this is what I'm passionate about, let me help, whatever it might be. But you might get some ideas from that master plan as well.
I'll check that out. Is that on the
beginning of this? It's on the town website. Yeah, and I also, I think you came in late, and you have all of us to help you. We are here for you to help you run a campaign, help make phone calls, send postcards, do yard signs. You have a group of very experienced people here who are good at doing campaigns. And so you wouldn't be in this alone. And we have a little bit of funds that we can throw your way as well. So if you are interested, just know that there is a team behind you.
What a pitch. My goodness.
Right?
We're going to pitch the campaign and we're going to run it, and it's great.
You just got to show up.
That's right. Hey, friends, I did not realize that it was 8:15 already, and I
Wow.
already an
Thank
hour.
you for joining us.
Well, it was so much fun. I didn't even look at the time. It was just having fun. And thank you for participating and sharing your thoughts with me. And I would really, really encourage, I know that Amanda will help facilitate getting your thoughts to this commission or whatever it's going to look like, to really examine what the difference is between 2018 and 2020. And I will just put a plug here to say that we have to build a sustainable organization, both for the House and the Senate, down ballot candidates in particular, that withstands wave elections and wins in tough elections. And that looks like a really strong bottom up party instead of just the top down that we've had forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
So thank you, Amanda, for inviting me here. Thank you for this opportunity to chat. And we are sort of seacoast neighbors, so I expect to run into you all shortly when we can be amongst friends and community again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you. Yeah, you all.
Thanks,
That
Mom.
will actually is a great way to end. So thank you, Molly. Thank you all for joining. We will have a holiday party in December. And so stay tuned. We will send out some info about that shortly.
Yay.
Well,
Thank you.
Amanda,
And James, we'll stay in touch.
I was
Yes,
going to
Dean?
talk to you about compost, Amanda, but we can do that.
I'm gonna get
Woo!
you. Yeah, I'm gonna get you a speaker for your next meeting.
Oh, fun. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because they'll be able to tell you more than I can. So I'm gonna connect you with DES and have them be hopefully a speaker at your next sustainability committee meeting.
I appreciate that. I had a great chat with Mike Nork.
I love Mike, great guy. DES is phenomenal. They need more funding. That's what I'm working on this year. So, all right, y'all, thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great day.
you.
And we'll see you in a
Amanda.
month, if not before.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, Amanda,